Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Authors on Mission podcast. Now, what if I told you that the path to self-discovery might be hidden in 1,000 questions you've never been asked before? The transformation lies in the spaces between what we're taught to discuss and what we're told to keep quiet about. Well, today we're diving deep with Laura Alyn, a creative polymath who's made her mission to map the unmappable, the terrain of our inner world through the lens of soul, mind, spirit, and body. She's the author behind All About Sex and All About Weed, two books that aren't just collections of questions, but invitations to radical self-exploration. Laura writes amazing books, but also creates sacred containers for conversations that we've been afraid to have. From her early days journaling at 12 to developing frameworks that connect academic discipline with astrological wisdom, she's been on a quest to democratize the deepest questions of human experience. So, at this episode of Authors on Mission, we're going to discuss how visionary writers are reshaping not just literature, but consciousness itself. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer here at Authors on Mission, and today we're asking what happens when someone dares to write the questions that could change everything. Laura, welcome to our show.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. You're an artist, you're a scientist, you're a host, and it's just some amazing stuff here that you've been able to put out into the form of a book. Just some fun questions that could get everyone talking, and I love that. It's an amazing thing. I'm wondering, first off, what inspired you to write these books?
Yeah, so in 2020, I went through this spiritual awakening, but I was so ashamed of it because I had grown up in academia. My mom's a teacher, and now I'm getting my PhD. And so it was just so radical to think about knowledge outside of what we were taught in school. And I had written a chakra book that's now out. But at the time, I couldn't put it out. There was just like some blockage to live my own truth that I couldn't make that leap. And so that's where the sex book came about, where I'm like, well, I can't talk about this taboo subject that I find so taboo with spirituality. Let me dive into a different taboo subject. And so it was all about sex. And so that's how that title came about, where I wanted to have this series of all about blank and to dive into these taboo topics to really help people get to a place where they feel comfortable talking about these things. So the questions, especially in the sex book, it starts off really PG, and then it gets darker and deeper as you go on into the book. But it's really a place to start out and to start asking these questions about what is it that I like in bed, So like, sometimes we want to talk about other things that we don't feel comfortable with other people, but here it could be a question book where you can talk about the partner, or you can just journal about it for yourself.
Understood, right. And by asking these questions, you get the self-reflection that maybe you wouldn't have even thought to ask yourself or really ponder about. So I can see how it really just, opens the mind to it. But, that being said, you did mention that, you kind of embarked on a sense of spirituality recently, and you mentioned sacred writing. So I'm wondering, how does that stay balanced within your work and your practice, being that, you're also involved in academia and you're taking on all these other projects too? How do you balance it all together?
So with understanding intuition, well, that's like what I'm trying to understand through my research is this little voice in your head that we hear about it a lot, like on TV or through music. There's this little voice at the back of your head that's telling you what to do, what's right and wrong. But we don't really know what that is scientifically. And that's what my research is looking at. But when I'm writing, that sacred act is about letting go of the programming or like how our mind works and really diving into this flow state is like the only way that I can describe it, where it almost feels like I'm in conversation, either with like a part of myself. I don't know if it's like my higher self or a divine part, or I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's this flow state where I don't overthink. I just do. I just write. And so that's a lot how these questions came about, where I'm watching TV and then a question pops up in my head. I'm like, oh, I have to add that to the book. Or we're at dinner and my husband and I are having a conversation, and then a question arises, like, oh, let me add that to the book. So that's really how this book came about, was over time, these collection of questions that I was just asking myself, trying to understand it myself. I grew up Catholic, so these kinds of questions were never even allowed to ask, much less go deep and ask, why do I think these things, or why do I like these things? And so, yeah, that's how it's been sacred writing.
Understood. Perfect. And it's really cool that you also came up with these questions throughout the course of your day, just whatever inspired you, whatever came about, and you were able to just write it down. I think that's a great tip for all authors out there. Whenever you're inspired by something, you come up with an idea, whether it's questions that you're putting into your book or, the next chapter of your book, something your character might do, write it down. Don't forget it. Keep a phone ready to go or something like that. Really cool stuff. So I'd like to transition a little bit more into the books themselves. For example, starting with All About Sex, you included both, I guess you would say, raunchy and also profound questions. So I guess my question to you is, how do you balance playfulness with deeper meaning in discussing these topics? It's a fine balance for sure between being a little bit fun, but also serious. So where did that balance come from?
I think it's just who I am.
Okay.
Where I really prioritize play, even though I am a really hard worker, and I have always prioritized especially with academia, like writing and like academics and research in that sense. But being playful, I think, is so integral to the human experience, where when we grow up, we think, oh, I'm not a kid anymore, so I can't play. When in reality, that play should continue more now, because we are adults and we can choose what to do. If you, as a kid, if you want to go and go on a swing, you need somebody to help and push you, But as adults, we get to experience play in a whole new way and really help out and care for that inner child. And like you said, there are some raunchy questions in there, but I think those were more to push the limits of what can this play look like, and what society tells us is okay to play is different when we introduce different stimuli, is a way to put it, to really bring it out. So I think that they're all playful in nature, even though some of them do push the limits.
Understood. I like that. I like how you related to the inner child in play. It's important to have positivity and, less serious things mixed with what's so serious about life. It's how we go. We can't just be all one way or the other. A nice balance is important. So I can see how you've put that into your book. And transitioning into the second, All About Weed. Really cool, though, too. Of course, another unique topic, one that not a lot of people discuss. I guess what's interesting, too, is you mentioned a lot of these did come to you while you were high. So would you say that this was heavily influenced by a balance of creative and psychological, physiological thinking? Because it's beyond your typical party game. It's really about, deeper connections. So where do most of these questions come from?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people think about marijuana as this drug where it's like this gateway drug and it's going to get like all of these bad things, has such a bad rap. But I think at the root of it, it's a way to meet other sides of yourself. And so under the influence, you start to unravel who you are by asking why. And I think that's like the main thing of how I got to where I am today, is asking that why question over and over and over again, when it comes to beliefs, when it comes to preferences, when it comes to decisions, any kind of decision. And so to answer your question, it was about how can I use this substance to not only connect myself deeper within myself, but also with other people. And so in the book, this one's arranged a little differently, whereas the All About Sex book, it can be just like a journal prompts kind of questions where you could actually journal about it. This one is more of a party game where there's 3 questions on every page, and it has a prompt at the top, like answer all of them, or the one who loves Disney more, answer, you get to answer first. So something like that, where it's a little more of a party game. And then the 3 questions, they can be silly, like any, just like a random question, what's your favorite color? Or they can go deeper into like, what's one thing that you want to change about the world? Because I think that when you're under the influence, the possibilities are endless. Like I feel like when we're not under the influence, it's like there's this glass ceiling that we can feel. But under the influence, that kind of goes out the window, and all of these possibilities just come into your head. And I think that's why it's tied to creativity a lot. But these questions are developed to have you go deeper into yourself, into the other person if you're playing with somebody, or into the whole group, and really bringing people together.
I like that. And that's such a perfect way to answer too. It's all about connecting people and really getting to the bottom of what it all means. So perfect stuff. Now going into the writing process a little bit, we talked about you, we talked about your books, and now of course all the authors listening today would love to know more about the writing process, which for you, of course, as we mentioned, is a sacred act, something that comes to you. And one thing I saw when I was looking you up a little bit is that you've actually wrote a 138-page fiction book in under 3 weeks, and that it was just effortless and allowed you to get into such a flow state. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that sounds like something a lot of authors would love to learn more about.
Yeah, so that was for the book called Monterey, and it was this deep dive into this spiritual world that I called Monterey. It's kind of like Alice in Wonderland meets philosophy, where she falls into this deep hole, and it's really dark, and it's her trying to find her way back to herself, back to her town, Monterey. And I wrote it in the little closet underneath the stairs at my house. And it had to have this like little dark room where I could just sit and write with no distractions. And so talking about that sacred act and going into that flow state, I didn't even do it. I didn't even like smoke or anything like that. I did it completely sober, because sometimes people ask like, because the book is pretty trippy, but I was not under the influence when I wrote it. It felt almost like there was this voice inside of me that was just dictating as I wrote. Before the book, like when I was first like in the brainstorming spots, it was, well, actually how the whole thing started was this image in my head that I could not get rid of. And it just kept coming up and up and up until I had to sit down and just write it. And I think that it was like so pent up for so long that by the time I finally got down to sit with my computer, it was just coming out of me. So I think that's why I was able to write it so fast. Now, would I do it again? Probably not, because I would spend like 16 hours just in that little closet. And so my husband would have to knock on the door like, hey, you haven't eaten, hey, come out, things like that, because I was just so focused in getting this story out of me.
That's really interesting. And one thing we do talk a lot about on our podcast is writing space. Sometimes we talk about feng shui or the need for, natural light or something comfortable, but a closet then. Very interesting, but also I can see how that does induce the creative flow. So that's really cool, and that's a very interesting tip. Was there anything in particular that really helped to spark that creativity while in there?
I think it was like the darkness of it, because like I mentioned, the book, it's her in the darkness as well. And so like being in the same environment almost as the main character, her name is Reina in the book. And so being in the same like headspace as her, being in this dark room really helped. And also like being so confined where the only outlet was through the computer. I couldn't go run outside or paint. I love to paint, but it was just something for me to like really just sit down and focus and to just get it done, get it out. The other thing is that I had, at the time, it's when Drake released, oh man, I don't even know. Oh, honestly, never mind, that album. And I would just have it on repeat in my headphones. And so just like really like sticking to that, listening to that beat over and over and over again throughout the different songs, it really helped me to keep track of time was one, because when this album was over, I'm like, okay, how am I doing on this chapter? Do I need to move on? Things like that. but yeah, just really like locking in and getting it done.
Understood. Yeah, I get that. And kind of getting into the zone. I mean, music is another huge thing. I listen to lo-fi, whatever it does that really gets the flow moving. That's perfect.
Yeah,
Um,
I usually listen to lo-fi as well,
yeah.
or classical music. I've gotten really into classical. So like that Drake album was just a one-off thing. I don't know why it connected, but it did.
Yeah, hey, it's something that works, right?
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, nowadays they actually do have like lo-fi versions of popular songs too, so I'm sure you could find a Drake lo-fi album out there somewhere. But aside from that, there's still really great stuff, and I think that all authors can benefit from what you're putting out there right now. The idea of just breaking the barriers, getting questions out there that people don't usually talk about, but then also allowing your creativity to flow and flourish in different environments, just as you have said. So that's cool. And yeah, I mean, as we begin to wrap up today, I guess I'm curious to know, have you gotten any feedback from your books yet? You really do tackle some taboo subjects purposefully. I'm wondering if you've heard any positive feedback from those who have tried these games on yourself.
Yeah, especially the sex book. I have heard a lot of people say that they have gotten deeper, like they didn't know what was out there when it came to sexuality or like how to embrace it. I think that's like the bridge that this book has created, because we see like sex on TV or through music, hear about it, but it's different when it's about yourself. And so I think people have really connected with that. And it's also free. This is like one, I think it's one of the only books that I have free on Amazon Kindle. And so through that, a lot of people have read it. More pages than the other ones, because the other ones you don't see like per page. It's just if they buy it or not. But this book definitely always gets a lot of pages read.
Got it. That's really great though, and it's good to know that you're changing lives in a way, opening people's minds through the books that you've written. It's incredible stuff. So all of that being said, what's next on the radar for you? You've gotten 2 books out. You've continuing to write. What's next on the plan?
Yeah, so I have a couple of guided journals out, and on my podcast, Grounded Spirits, we're actually going through them. So I wrote all of these about 3 years ago now. So to be able to share what's in them has been really magical on Grounded Spirits podcast. So you can check that out there. And then on my other podcast called Ela Radio, we investigate how do we know what we know. And that's where my new book is coming about. So it's all about that. It's called the Ornellian Framework. And this Ornellian framework is looking at the soul, mind, body, and spirit, and looking at all the academic subjects and really merging them all so that we can really understand ourselves. So when you say, when we talk about sex, where is it on the chart? Where is it in your inner world? And the answer is in the Scorpio section, where the body meets the soul. And it's one thing to know like, oh, this is my inner world, this is how I feel. But it's the other thing to actually be able to pinpoint it and say, okay, now I can understand if I have a blockage with this area in my life, what are the other things around it on this map to be able to understand it better and then be able to change it. So that book is coming out soon.
Well, it's really exciting. That sounds like a great book and something that's kind of branching off of what you've done already and just expanding even more so. Where can we stay up to date with this book and sort of timeline and stay in touch? I'm sure you've got some great websites and social media that we can check out and follow you along.
Yeah, if you go to theornellian.com/it's Laura Alyn, I'm sure you can link it below that. There I have a subscribe button where you can put in your email address, and I have updates on that. And I also share the actual chart and how to start using it before the book comes out so that people can start getting acquainted with it, so that when the book does come out, it'll go deeper into having you understand what each of the 16 different sections are, while being already acquainted with it, because 16 different sections, it's kind of a lot. And so people tend to get overwhelmed. But if we just focus on one section at a time, it all comes together at the end.
Understood. All right. Yeah. I mean, that's perfect. So guys, we're going to go ahead and put the links to everything you just mentioned in the description box of our podcast today, so you can get in touch, check out those resources, and just be up to date, because Laura, you have some amazing stuff out there. I think a lot of authors can learn from you, and also, the more they follow you, the more they'll get in touch with these resources too. But now I'm wondering if you have any advice for authors out there, anything that they can walk away with today and implement in their own practices, something that worked well for you.
Yeah, I think the main thing is to find your own voice as an artist, but I think that author comes for me under the category of artist, because authors are artists, just using words instead of paint. But anyway, my tip is to really find your voice and to really be secure in what you have to say, and know that even though it's scary to put your work out there, that if you feel it in your heart that it needs to come out, it needs to come out, and someone's going to benefit from it. So really be thinking about it that way, instead of what are people going to say about me? Think about the people that you're going to help by putting out your work, because I feel like that's the scariest part about being an author. I think it's one thing to have the self-discipline to finish your book, but it's the other thing to actually put it out there and receive critiques, because that's the scariest thing, with rejection letters and all of that. So, but just keep putting it out there, and the right eyes will see it.
I like that. Perfect. I love the positivity and the inspiration here, and also the open-mindedness and encouragement that you've given all of us to explore within ourselves. You have the courage to ask the questions that matter most, even if it does make us a little uncomfortable, but it's stuff we do need to think about. The books, they're just for fun. They're for fun in the party games, but also I think that it really does help everybody kind of transform into who they're meant to be. So some really great stuff here on our podcast. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle.
Of course. And to all of our listeners who are writers themselves, what Laura has shared today about sacred writing and breaking down academic gatekeeping, just follow her lead. Trust the flow of high consciousness and creativity. Because Laura here has shown us that sometimes the most important work we can do is to create space for the conversations that heal us. So thank you for joining us on the Authors on Mission podcast, and thank you for your continued work on opening minds and hearts. To all our audience today, Laura's books, All About Sex and All About Weed, are available now, so you can check them out. I'm going to put the links in the description box of this podcast today. And until next time, everybody, please keep questioning, keep creating, and remember, your story has the power to transform not just your life, but the world around you. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.